Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Sister City Advisory Committee, the 2024 year in review. Moved and seconded. Elise, is there anything you want to add to your report?
Staff have nothing further to add to the report.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Brilliant. Public share e-scooter and e-bike program. Sonawi, anything to add to your report?
Your worship, nothing further to add to the report. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor Wolf, just a minute. There you go.
Thank you. Through your worship, just two questions to staff. One is, has there been any official progress on the helmet issue with Lime ridership? Like getting them to wear them more frequently?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, yes, there has. Since 2023, Lime has changed their devices to have a lock-to bracket of the helmets to secure the helmets on the devices as part of check-in and check-out of the devices, and staff continue to audit the helmet supply, and that has increased substantially since that time, and we continue to monitor the amount of helmets available.
Great, thank you. My last question then is, in regards to the three options, I know there's Lime and Bird. Both of those are based out of the States, and I know with the ongoing tension and stuff. Both of them also do operations throughout North America, so it's not like they're one Canadian venture. But looking into the third option, the BCAA and their Evolve share program, they're BC based, not just Canadian based, but they're right here. They operate in Nanaimo, Comox Valley, Whistler, SFU, Burnaby. Did that factor into their score? I know it was the lowest of the three, and I'm sure it did factor in. But was there one thing about the BCA Evolve that was like a low score factor for them?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I'll start with the first part of your question. No, the current city procurement policy does not consider the domicile of the vendors, and therefore that was not included as part of the evaluation criteria. Lime was successful based on the safety features that their program offers, their experience in similar programs locally, as well as their attention to the operation plan and the equity program that they offer that Evolve did not have.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is kind of related to Lime and not, and I see Mr. Wurzel here, and I know our chief of police is always listening to us in our council meetings, but we do an absolute terrible job of convincing our population that are riding scooters in Richmond to wear helmets. I know when we brought this issue up in community safety last time, Lime ensured that all of their scooters and all of their bikes had helmets attached to them, and they do, like you said. They do have that. People still aren't wearing the helmets. We've got a real concern here, so I'll probably bring this up in community safety to start to look at some of the injury data as a result of people not wearing their helmets on the scooters in Richmond or the bikes. But, so I'm glad Lime stepped up and dealt with that almost immediately when yourself and Mr. B addressed that with him. But I'll tell you, we do a terrible job in enforcing the helmet laws here in Richmond. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for this. I had a question about the cost. Was there any, did you examine the costs of using a scooter? Did the different providers give a breakdown of what they charge?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, yes, they did, and for the most part, they're very similar in terms of the fees associated with the use of these devices. And in addition, Lime does offer several programs that have discounts to riders as well, including those registered in the city's recreational fee subsidy program.
Oh, that's good. I wonder if everybody knows about that, because I was speaking to some seniors the other day, and this woman said that her husband wanted to try a different way to get to Minoru and decided to take one, and he was shocked that it was like almost $9 to just go a couple blocks. So it'd be way cheaper to take the bus or a cab maybe. And so I was just wondering if there was any variation in the cost between the different, but that there is a break for people registered with that, then that's good. We got to get the word out there on that. Yeah, I've also seen the helmets on the bikes, so I've seen the helmets on the scooters. They're there, and I think it's definitely an enforcement thing if we want to try to pick that up. So I look forward to seeing that in community safety. And thanks.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for this information to staff, through you to staff. So we've been doing the pilot program for a couple of years now. It seems to me, are we doing this in conjunction with the province? We're giving them some data back? Because I thought the province was supposed to be doing a pilot project around speeds, licensing, the operations of vehicles, mobility, alternate mobility vehicles, things. So where are we on that, or where's the province on that? Have we heard anything?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, the province is still in the midst of a pilot program. They extended the first phase, which was the 3-year term, last year, starting in April 2024, for another 4-year pilot. Their rationale for continuing on the pilot basis is so that they can collect more safety and wellness data around these devices before finalizing the Motor Vehicle Act regulations to authorize them in the province.
Okay, so maybe one day they'll have figured out that an e-scooter going at 60 kilometers an hour should probably be considered the same as a gas scooter and should be licensed. But okay, I appreciate that there's a discounted rate as well. Now, we tried to do something to make access to younger riders below 19. Is that still happening? So can someone under 19 still have access to this stuff?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the minimum age to use one of the shared devices, and it's similar across all proponents, is 18 because a legal agreement has to be entered into. However, Lime has indicated if a parent would like to authorize their child, they can make arrangements for such.
Okay, so there is a possibility that somebody younger can access this because, I've said this before, it seems odd to me that, you can get yourself a 400 horsepower vehicle, slap an N on the back of it at 16 years old, but you can't rent a scooter to tootle around at 15 kilometers an hour. So it seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect, but that's a provincial thing too, not necessarily us. But I'm glad that they were able to work something out. So with the recreation fee subsidy, then that doesn't then extend to younger kids in a family, or would the parent be able to attach the child to their own account?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, the parent could pursue that with the operator and see if arrangements could be made.
Okay, thank you. And I will just put out that I'm not convinced that enforcement isn't happening by the RCMP. I don't know anyone that necessarily got a ticket for not having a helmet, but certainly my kid got pulled over for wearing a helmet and was given a positive ticket. So, but they are noticing and they're letting the kids at least know that it's important and what they're doing is correct if what they're doing is right. And I would imagine that if a student wasn't wearing it, they would have been told otherwise. They don't necessarily need to start slapping high school kids with tickets, but they do need to enforce it, and it means people are out there doing the work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I agree with all the comments that are here. I'm going to come back as we on the idea of helmets because we spent considerable time a number of years ago talking about helmets. And I guess on page 65, there are safety messages affixed to drivers reminding them to wear their helmets. We probably see them not wearing helmets more often than do so. And I'm just wondering, and I agree with Councillor Liu, positive tickets, has Lime or any of these people, because when you look at the scooters, they go faster than the cars on the road, on these e-bikes and what have you, about a discount if you agree to wear a helmet, I'll give you 10% off the hourly rate or whatever. It's almost like a positive ticket, et cetera. Because I think we really, although the RCMP are doing a great job, and they always do in every aspect, but there are still those that do not have helmets. And we know what will happen. So I'm just looking at it. It says there's a safety message. I've gone up to that e-bike. Where is that message? It's not on the stanchion. Where is it in the helmet? I mean, I haven't gone to rent the bike itself, but to look at what's there.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, with respect to the Lime devices, the message regarding proper use of helmets, that's on the devices, it's in the app, it's on their website.
So it's on
We have,
this.
indeed, yes.
Okay, I don't use that, so I would go to, okay. Thank you. Okay, but I really think we've got to look to, and if Councillor Heat's going to bring that up next committee safety meeting, I think we'll have hopefully a very fruitful discussion on it, because I think it's something we've got to continue on. Not just the youth. We've got to look at the adults that are riding throughout the city without helmets. The youth are doing a good job. Never always blame the youth. They're ahead of us. Thank you.
All right, someone want to move it? Moved and seconded, discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Hugh Boyd Fieldhouse, Mandy Baines and Martin Yanis.
Nothing further to add.
Okay. I'll ask for comments. We'll go to Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions at this point. What does the football club, Richmond United Football Club, what do they currently store in the field house?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it's an assortment of various items, from pennies to hand sanitizer. It is quite a mix of items, and also material that supports their day-to-day use of the fields as well.
Okay, thanks. A follow-up on that point. Has the fire department been consulted to look at the need for a potential fire suppression system that's under option 2 because of what you said is there? Is that a concerning combustible material stuff?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. The building was built in 1969. The code at the time does not require the building to be sprinkled. Should we upgrade the building or touch the building when we upgrade it, sprinkles will be required to meet the current code.
Thanks. And then under that same option, it mentions removing plumbing fixtures. So that would be like removing water access. Is that the case? Under option 2, it would remove all plumbing, or is that just like some plumbing fixtures?
Option 2.
The middle of page 70.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, should we start with option 2, we'd have to replace those fixtures and upgrade them. The mechanical units are basically not operational, and the drainage is also closed.
Okay, thanks. My last question, through your worship, is in regards to option 1, or demolition. I assume this is referring to traditional demolition, which involves heavy equipment, smashing it all to bits, and then disposing of it. Or does it also potentially include deconstructing it with the labor-intensive process and potentially recouping some money from the wood salvage materials?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we would be following the Council Policy 2308. The problem with this facility, it contains asbestos and lead extensively in the roof, the walls, and the flooring. So trying to salvage it as much as possible, we will. But at the end, we will follow the 80% diversion policy.
Sorry, just a follow-up then on that one. So going back to option 2, if it says installing a new roof, does that mean it would impact, like there'd be a lot of asbestos removal needed as opposed to just slapping on new asphalt?
Through the chair to Council Wolf, that is correct. We will have to remove the asbestos.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for this. I had similar questions to Councillor Wolf, but you just answered them. Last one, I was wondering if just putting a new roof on would trigger the need for fire protection.
Through the chair to Councilor Galanders, that is correct.
So you can't put a new roof on a building without it changing the code that it's built
Through,
under?
through the chair to Councilor Galanders, the way this building was built and the condition of the roof, we have to strip it all, remove all the asbestos. Once we do that, we will be triggering a building permit, hence we need to upgrade it. If we remove walls or upgrade the building, that's basically what we have to do.
Okay.
We are repairing the roof in certain areas. That does not require, but once we do replace it, yes.
Okay, just to follow up, I would be interested to know if there's any way to have that cost be a little bit lower, just to get, remove asbestos and get a roof on and just leave everything else the way it is. I see, it's not really a question, just make a comment. I do see people using it still, probably because the new field house isn't used yet, isn't built yet. I was just driving by there the other day, and there was a little fundraiser thing or some sort of a handing out of T-shirts thing going on out there, a table set out outside and a group of kids. And so, yeah, I would like to see it just be able to stay and continue to be used as it's being used, at least until the big field house is done. So I don't know if we can, I guess a question would be here, how long can we keep using it as we're using it before we have to tear it down?
Through the chair to Councilor Galanders, should we use it for the storage purposes that it's currently used for, we can maintain it up to that level, just spot fixes. And our plan is to demo it at close to the completion of the new West Richmond Pavilion. So the storage space, which we have 800 square feet in that facility to replace the Hugh Boyd Park facility. So that we made it just a couple of months difference between them so we can finish the whole site, similar to Steveston. And then we would give them a container to keep the storage temporarily for a couple of months before the new building opens.
Okay. I wonder about just leaving the whole decision until after the field house is done, but I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have any comments, but what would it cost just to take a few walls out to create more space in there?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, actually that is the most difficult thing to do because each of the walls is a structural wall. After we did the condition assessment, it seems that all of the structural walls, the way this was built, was that all of them are structural. Hence, if we remove any of the walls, we have to prop the building up, remove the walls, change the footings, and then do it. It is not as easy. It is that is basically option 3 because option 2, we were going to just upgrade it, bring it to code, and they can be used. If we were to do this, it would be very cost extensive, like 1.6 to 2 million, depending on the program. But removing those walls, unfortunately, in this building, they're all structural walls, so it requires a lot of work.
Okay, I just make a comment, Your Worship. The building was conceived in 1964 by Dennis Hedges, Gil Blair, Bob McMath, and a few others in the community. And that was built by and for Richmond Youth Soccer. And that's the only use I would want to ever see that building for. The fire department can go elsewhere, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, but that was built by community for community on it, and I have a little bit of emotional attachment to it. If we can't take the walls out, I would suggest we maintain it as long as we can and under its current weight. We're not going to have a building under the trees there for 4 years. We're not going to have the field house built for 4 years. This still has some use. They can still meet in there. Their room, I'm sure there's there is a couple of soft walls that probably can come out where it can be used for storage or other things. So I don't want to see it just demolished at the moment. Down the road, that decision should be made. We made a mistake when we demolished the swimming pool immediately. It was a huge mistake. And I'm not going to make another one, but also it does have need for it. And to say Richmond Youth Soccer could still use it to store stuff in, the soccer people can still use it. May not be the best, but it's usable in a limited capacity. So my concern is, to be quite frank with you, is to do nothing right now and earmark it down the road and continue on. There's nothing that's pressing that has to go. Doesn't affect the other construction through your worship to staff, we're still going to be able to construct. I think the trees are a bigger problem than this building.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, we can of course leave it as is, and our plan is to leave it until Q2 of 2027, just before the facility ends, and that's when we would be demolishing it. We just wanted council to approve it so we could award it at the same time and save money.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And that's what I would suggest, we leave to Q2 2027 and carry on, and at that time, the discussion take place on this demolition.
Well, according to what staff is saying, they want to award the demolition now. When is the expected completion of the new facility?
To the chair, at the end of 2027.
All right, so there'd be, what, 6 months, 4 to 6 months without that facility?
Through the chair, we would estimate that number about 4 to 6 months, yes, but I think it's much less than that. We will try to compress that.
Now, the functions that are being employed in the existing building, will there be the same functionality and more in the new building?
To the chair.
To the chair, yes, absolutely. It's currently being used for informal storage, and the new facility will offer 800 square feet of storage space to support use and programming.
Okay, and how many square feet do they have now?
Through the chair, it's informal storage, so it's a partial of the building that they're using in that way.
Approximately
Approximately 600 square feet.
600. All right, so there's going to be a little more in the new building, okay? Councilor Heat.
Yes, and I'm following up on Councillor Galander's and Councillor McNulty's reasoning behind this. So I have a couple questions related, Q2 2027, hopefully the end of 2027, unless we have an MCAL problem again there. It's going to be minimum 6 months that we're going to be without any storage. Is there the possibility of bringing in some temporary trailer storage during that 6 month or 8 month or how long it's going to be period?
To the chair, to Councillor Heat, that is our plan. We were going to bring a C can for that storage until the new building opens.
Okay.
We transfer it.
So my next question is, did we do costing on bringing a C-can in right now for that storage?
Through the chair to Councillor Heat, the cost of the C-can is close to $10,000 and the delivery is a couple of thousand. We can do that now, but because we're leaving the facility until Q2 of 2027, the idea is to keep it until then and then bring in the C-can.
So, following my line of questioning here, you're saying that we want to get approval for the demolition, although it's going to be in 2027, for $120,000 now. Was that factored into the project of building the new field house?
Through the chair to Councillor Heat, yes, it was.
So it's not additional money that we will have to come up with?
It is not.
Good. And the other question I have is, how many other field houses do we have that are in the same condition as Boyd?
Through the chair to Councillor Heat, I don't have that exact information for you right now, but I'm happy to provide you with a memo before council.
No, don't worry. I just thought if you had that just for my own information. But so if we just keep it the way it is till Q2 of 2027, we're not going to put $350,000 into it as an option 2.
Through the chair to Councillor Heat, option 1, which is the demo, is covered within the original budget. The other 2 are not.
Not, that's what I figured. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Day.
Yeah, everybody who's had any kind of work done knows that if you get a quote today, it's not good for very long. So if you're saying we get a quote now in April of 2025, and that is going to be good enough for 2027 that there won't be increases?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that's why we're suggesting we get approval now. We would like to award it upfront. We've allowed for escalation for this purpose, but the demo, 80%, we believe that this budget is more than enough for it. So we've allowed for it in 2027 because it's a small amount and the scope of work is very limited to demo. So yes, we can confirm that is the cost.
Okay, I don't understand why we have to tear it down. I mean, it's only 970 square feet. maybe there's someone who would buy it for $1 and move it away and repurpose it. So I'm not really in favor of tearing it down, certainly not now, and certainly not before the new facility is finished, because I just checked, and according to the Westminster Community Center, they use it for storage, but they also have storage inside the community center, and they have storage in walking containers and some on the soccer field itself. So there's a lack of storage. And tearing this down, I'm not so sure it should ever be torn down. I think we should consider keeping it, because when do you ever have enough storage, especially for sports groups? So I just don't see the advantage of tearing it down. I also agree with Councillor McNulty. We should have never torn down the aquatic center either. But we did. So I won't be supporting this, because I feel that either we table it and talk to those different soccer groups and find out, you know, what their situation is, because like I said, right now, they don't even have enough storage. So I don't support tearing it down, sorry.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Thanks for the report and the update. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I remember using it as a kid, and it is a cute little building. It would be nice if we could retain it in some ways. But I remember thinking the same thing about the Minaroo Pavilion. I thought it was a terrible idea to tear down that building because so many memories in it and everything. But now I look at what's there, and it's fantastic and very well used. So the old pavilion's gone. With this one, I couldn't have supported option 3. Option 2 was a little dicey. So I did support option 1 as I was reading through this. And I do agree with the comment about the swimming pool as well. And if you talk to people in the community, just a side note, we are kind of chronically short on those kind of facilities. So that'll be interesting going down the road. One of the things that I do like, if we do accept option 1, is kind of the reimagining of the entranceway into Boyd Park at 1 and Francis. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there, maybe even some tree replacements that we're losing with putting in the new building. But the question I have for you, though, is with the budget, and I think it's been touched on, but just to be clear, the budget as it's laid out now, you know, encompasses this. If we don't do this now and decide to do it later, like after 2027, I mean, that'll be a whole new budget and likely an increase in costs. Is that fair?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, yes, it is.
Yeah, so I do like the idea of not rushing it and leaving it until the latest possible moment in 2027. And so I'll support that if that's what's on the floor. Thank you.
Councillor Gillanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just, yeah, one more question. I don't understand why it would need to be in Q2 of 2027. Like, why could we not just have it be done when the building's finished?
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, our idea is to complete the building and the park and repurpose that space, make it green space, complete the landscaping, not while the new building is built. We start demoing the old Hugh Boyd Park, the field house. Should council direct us to leave it later on, we were thinking of completing the building and the site all together, similar to Steveston.
Right, yeah. I understand, and I understand why you're putting it in now to, you know, hopefully save money and everything else. But I'm kind of feeling the same way as Councillor Day is about it. I just think we don't really know until the other building's there, what kind of uses there are, how the community feels about it. And I would much prefer to just leave it. So I just don't think I can support option 1.
No. Those who have talked about the Minaroo Aquatic Center, the last thing I want to do is get back into the debate. But those who advocate for that are ignoring the fact that the last estimate to preserve half the building was $8 million. It was a building filled with mold and asbestos. And if you wanted a full refit of the whole thing, it was something like $27 million. So let's, if we're going to quote the history of the thing, let's at least be accurate. Secondly, we have approved the program for what we're wanting to do with this new facility. And it just strikes me that, you know, buildings have a useful lifetime. This one sounds like it is well past it. Now, I'm not worried if we want to say, instead of Q2 2027, Q2 2028, I mean, that's feasible, isn't it, Martin?
To the
You
chair.
you wouldn't have that finished look for the whole thing, but you could do that.
It would be possible, Chair.
Yeah, so I can see that, to leave the functionality of it for the whole time. But the reason we're building a new facility is because the old one is past its lifetime. And, rather than chase this with good dollars, I think that we're spending a lot of money on this new field house, and that we should respect the fact that this is going to be it, just like the Mineral Center for Active Living. That is the main pool facility in the city. So I'll support option one, though if you want to direct that it be demolished in Q2 2028, I can support that as well.
To the chair, if I may just add one thing. If we do prolong it, the OBI, the operating budget, will need to be increased, and our maintenance costs will need to be increased. I just want to highlight that for council consideration. Because the OBI, the idea is
It's
to take,
based on 6 months?
it's based on, after we demo this facility, it goes to the new facility, and then we top it up. But it should council direct us. I just wanted to highlight that.
What kind of order of magnitude are we talking about?
Through the chair.
Just a minute, hang on. There you go.
To the chair, early estimates, depending on the use, are between 10 to 40,000 a year.
All right, so that's not an insurmountable amount, and if we were to pass something like that, you could be more exact in the coming week towards council.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, we got Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. My comments was not to demolish now immediately, the same with the previous facility. I think we have to get the facts straight, as you agreed, right on the floor. The hesitation. I'd like to move that we would demolish it in 2028, and we maintain using it as it is until then, till such times.
Okay, just let me capture the spirit of that. So the motion,
Not saying don't demolish. I'm saying,
no, I understand. Let me clarify what I think you're saying. The recommendation is that the existing field house be demolished as outlined in the report. It would be demolished,
it would be maintained currently until
well-
demolishing in 2028.
just a minute. Maintaining it is implied, isn't it? If we're not going to demolish it till whatever, 2027 or 2028, you're going to be using it, right?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, so I don't think we need to specify that. So if we said that the existing field house be demolished as outlined in the report, providing that the demolition occur in Q2 2028, okay? Okay, so that's,
That will do it.
okay, so that's moved and seconded. Councilor Liu. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff. Thank you. I appreciate the information that we can kind of keep it going. It's not an insurmountable cost to keep it going. I think, we want that building available for the soccer people, the bathroom for kids if they really need it, and that kind of stuff until the new facility's available. Someone did bring up to me that there's a brass plaque for a dedication on the original building, and I'm hoping that we can save that and maybe repurpose it, put it up in the new building, or somehow, recognize the work of people in Richmond and the work they've done in supporting soccer.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, absolutely. The plaque will be accessioned, and during our engagement and design process, we'll honor that history and consider how to reuse or reintegrate the plaque into the building or the park.
Cool. Okay, we'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councilors Wolf and Day opposed. Okay, thank you, staff. Playing field user fees. Moved and seconded, discussion on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Did you have anything to tell us?
Nothing further to add.
It was brilliant, brilliant. That's all I can say. Community celebration grants, the allocations. Let me start off the discussion This was obviously a really tough one, just like the grants process. So very interesting comments and a lot of hard work went into it. So do you have any comments to make?
I do. I would like to note that one applicant was missing from the not recommended list in the report in front of you.
Yeah.
The Hamilton School PAC application was not recommended as it was a fundraiser, as per the eligibility criteria.
Okay. That's the kind of thing that if this is adopted, this report, probably we should have a memo from you to formalize that. Okay, let's go to, anything else?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Two questions through your worship, staff. First off, it mentions in the report section objectives of the program. What the last bullet on page 81 is promote environmentally sustainable event practices, ensuring events follow the principles in this Richmond Sustainable Event Toolkit. I went through the toolkit. I also got a copy of the 7-step quick guide of the kit. And I know there's an ongoing referral into promoting reusable materials at events. And I think both the toolkit and this guide could be enhanced to mention that. It does in both talk about reusable cutlery and not having single-use water bottles, but it could go that step further and promote reusable, like bowls, plates, cups, in both locations, which I thought was missing. And then, I guess that's not a question. The next one is a question. It's on, from that list of not recommended for funding. So item number, or project number 61 is the Hamilton Community Association for Hamilton Night Out. And I looked through the ones that are recommended. I think there were 5 other community associations, South Harm, Thompson, Steveston, et cetera. And they were all for events as well. And the reasoning of why the Hamilton Community Association didn't get it is because it said that the city received, the organization received city funding from the Parks Rec an event grant. I'm just clarifying, did all the other community associations events get 0 funding from the grants? And that's why they were approved, because this is their only source of city funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it has to be a specific event. So if they've received funding for that specific event, they are not eligible. If they've received funding for another event, then they would be eligible for this grant.
Great, just to clarify that, thanks.
Good report. I have no problem with what you've allocated, but I have some questions, possibly with our policy. On page 82, it says individual political parties or events related to political activities or lobbying, and any events or projects, et cetera, having funding from other aspects in Richmond grant. I think that needs to be rewarded, okay? Because it sounds to me like political parties could get other sources of funding from the city of Richmond. If you read it literally and figuratively, I think you've got it. I think that needs cleaned up. It should say, stop at lobbying period are not eligible. And then events and projects that have funding from other sources, et cetera, are ineligible. Okay? It doesn't look good, okay? And I would suggest we look at it as from a policy. I'm not trying to nitpick diction here, but we just went through utilizing facilities, et cetera, for political purposes. The other question I have is in the eligibility criteria, it must be free and open to the public. I don't know what that means because I've never been invited to an event by a parent advisory committee. As a matter of fact, parent advisory committees only ever invite one counselor, and I won't say which counselor that is. It seems to be a locked shop. I've never been invited to student council because I can't go onto the school without permission. So it's not open to the public. I think we have to decide what we mean by open to the public, okay? Now, if you have a block party at the end of your block and I happen to walk by, hopefully I'll get someone invited and stop and have a hot dog, okay? Because that's open to the public. So I think some of the things that we say and do it's been brought to my attention about a number of things, and I'm passing them out here. And I think we have to correct, nothing to do with the awarding. The awarding's fine. But what does it mean? And as I say, can I go onto a school? I know the process, the doors are locked usually in most cases. So I can't get into the school if I know that so-and-so or a student council's doing it. I'm not saying we don't give them the money, but it's not open to the public. So we've got to, I think we should be looking at that on it. Because 8 of the awards are PACs, okay? And so anyhow, I just would like to see it. When they're in our facilities, there's no problem. When there's some of the other facilities they're from. The other question is, if it's open to the public, are these people asked to announce that they're having them? Because it is public money. You know, Williams Road and Springmont Gate, we're going to have a block party there. Actually, I shouldn't say it because they do go to Manoa Steve's and they do announce that they're having a block party. But there's a block party at Manoa Steve's tonight by the Williams Road group. So it's announced, but how are these things all announced? Are they all in-house and private parties?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we did very carefully scrutinize the applications from the schools because our intention is not to fund a school-based activity or an event that's just for the school community. So the ones that were considered eligible were the ones that did demonstrate a willingness and a methodology for attracting the broader community. So something like a concert in the park on school property that would be promoted in the community centers for the broader community to attend was funded. Others that were just specific to the school community were not funded for that reason, that they would not be open to the public as a whole.
So as we did a number of weeks ago, the clause would be, if you're inviting somebody, you invite all. That, because this is public money, it's the same as what we had before in terms of events. You can't have one project here and one project over here. They are together, and I think we've got to look at that. So we will get a notice of when these events are taking place by these people. They should be able to tell us when they are, and hopefully there'll be open invitations. I'm just using us as the example, but the public would have an open invitation.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we'll certainly encourage the event organizers to make mayor and council aware of their events.
I think we have to, I have to go more than that. We have it in policy here. We have a policy. You forgot about what we've done 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We need to have that. We need to have it listed. We need to know when those events are so the public can go to them. It should be on our website. Calendar of events. This is public money we put out. So, and I hope through you, your worship, and to CAO, it's got to be cleaned up. We got to do it, okay? It's not good enough just to throw it out because we had another line, more money coming up. And I know some of these people are very good in letting others know about their events and they're open to the public. So, and with that, I'll leave that, your worship. I think I've said enough on it and hopefully those definitions will get in there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all this work. I mean, 52 out of 77 are approved. I think that's a very good number. I think the problem with this is nothing to do with that, but the actual budget is just too low. I'm looking at $51,052 is like a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of our budget in Richmond. Think of what we could do if we actually went for the full ticket. I'm looking at, what page it is? It's on page GP, I think it was 83. It states that if it was 100% funded, it would be $100,105. That's it. And then all of these groups could be able to fully fund their events. Because prior to this, we paid 83% of the requested amount. Now we're only paying 67% of the requested amount. And considering what this program does, it brings people together, neighborhoods together, and if there was ever a time to spend more money on this program, it's now, with everything that's going on around the world. So my only, argument is that let's go back to the 83% at the very least, because this is such a successful program. And, I mean, I'm not great at math here, but it might be, closer to, 80 or 90,000 instead of 51,000. And when you consider what a small piece of that is of our budget, why don't we go back to what we used to do? And, I know, I'll tell you what page it's on. It's on page GP 82. It states that in 2024, eligible applicants received 83% of the eligible requested amount of funding, but due to the popularity, where they're recommending 66.7%. So I think council should step up and up the budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to share my experience when I was on the school PAC, we would have ideas of how can we bring the community together, how can we get our neighborhood involved, and we did do an outdoor movie night. We made sure that people told their neighbors, and they put it on Twitter and maybe on the school Facebook page. Word of mouth, it's not a lot of volunteers, and there's really no money to do formal invitations and ensure that the whole city knows about it. It's sort of, I see Councillor McNulty's point, absolutely. But for myself, with the idea of public money, I don't think that a grant turns that into a city event. I think it's different. I think it's, that we provide a grant to community groups so that they can enhance their community for their own, for wellness and growth in their community and connectedness within that community. And I don't think it needs to have a string attached, personally. So, and then, we also did a carnival, and it was for the public, for the neighborhood, for anybody to come. So I just don't think that they had the manpower to go and make sure that the whole city was invited or anything, but it was just to get the word out, and it was for the whole public. And my question, I've got a couple of questions. If it's some school parks are school district property and some are city property. So does that make any difference as far as the public use of those parks?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, I don't think so. I think there might be something that would trigger a REACT application, and they would have to fill it out, whether it was city property or school property.
Right on, yeah. So as long as it's outside in the park and word gets out and anyone can come, then to me that satisfies it being a public event, as long as they're trying to get the word out there. And it's not just for students. The movie nights that are inside the school, that's in school property, that would generally only be for siblings or like close friends or something like that. But my concern is how many PACs applied to have an event that was deemed not a public event. So were they all just really unaware, or did they apply in the past for a similar event and got it, or did something change? Because, surely they understand the difference. So there's just so many of them.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, through the application process, they do actually outline their marketing and how they are going to get the word out to the community. And through that, we had to take a good look and dive into what they were going to do in partnering. And most of the events either were ineligible because they weren't a public event, they were only going to be hosted at the school, to the school PAC, or they were a fundraiser for the school, which is another ineligible activity.
Yeah, and I understand the fundraiser one, absolutely. But I just noticed that, one school asked to do a carnival. So, but did you advise them on any of that, like for next year? Just so
I think through the chair, just to add to Ms. Boley's comments, we always encourage them to call us before they complete their application.
Right.
Many do, some don't. The ones that are deemed ineligible, because it's very clear that fundraisers are not eligible, will still get applications coming in for a fundraiser. So we do we provide feedback on their application. We let them know why it was not approved, if it was not improved. We do have a phone number and an email on the application, and do have staff available for a discussion. So certainly if you're working with people in the community, I think with any of our grant programs, always a good idea to have them give us a call.
Okay. And I'd be supportive of increasing the budget as well. I don't know for this year, but maybe for next year. So I don't know how we'd go about doing that, but I agreed with that comment by Councillor Day. Thanks.
I can't remember what kind of consultation there was with us about the overall budget for this, but I think probably a discussion for next year would be in order. Councillor Heaton.
Thank you. Part of the difficulty is how you write the grants. And I look here and I look at some of these PACs or student councils that were not recommended for funding. And the events, and you use the term that they're not public events. So I guess the first question I'm going to ask you, what is your definition of a public event?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, our definition of a public event would be an event that's open to a broader public beyond the school community. So that doesn't necessarily imply that it's a citywide event. So we have our citywide events like Cherry Blossom Festival that just happened on the weekend. We have budget and staff to market that citywide. We expect it to draw a citywide audience or perhaps even a regional audience. Most of the events in the community celebration grants, they're really focused to bring a local community together. It might be a geographic community, it might be a community sort of across the city. So there's different definitions of community, but we would certainly want to see it open beyond just the members of the school and their families.
So when we have one PAC here that's having a summer carnival and they word it diverse backgrounds for the community through interactive games and all that. You have other ones here that are wanting a carnival that have been closed down, and the one I mentioned previous is the one that was approved. I just think there's no clear definition on what is and what's not. And we've got a real problem here because I know and I've gone through this grant stuff before, I've written grant proposals before, and it's all how you write it, it's all how you word it. And I'll tell you right now, we've got to fix this problem because I'm going to tell you right now, from my opinion, it is not fair and equitable across the board. And that's not a criticism of you. It's probably a criticism of the policy, more or less, because I look at the ones that are turned down. You know, for example, Blanket BCs. We understand that's not a public event, but that's so important. You know, and I donate money to them personally simply because they get shut down every year from any grant process you could imagine. All they're doing is handing out blankets to homeless people that are cold and shivering and freezing during the winter time. You know, I understand that. We know the Fusion FC is the World Cup Fusion. You know, whether they're celebrating something that's a public event or something like that, I don't know. But I'll tell you, we're creating more chaos based on our definitions we're using on deciding who gets a grant and who doesn't get a grant. I wish they all could get a grant at the end of the day. To tell you the truth, because I think they're all viable people that certainly deserve it, especially if they're not for profit. So I have to agree with Councillor McNulty, Councillor Glanders, and I'm sure others around the table that feel we have to revamp how we hand out money here under the grant process. We went through it, sir, as the mayor alluded to previously, the grant process for some of the other grants here. We've got to fix this and make it fair and equitable across the board.
Thanks. Your Worship, just had one other question. I reminded myself, last week I attended the Zero Waste Committee for Metro Vancouver. One of the things that came up was for events, what do different municipalities do to provide education around how to sort garbage and recycling and stuff at events. And we did ask Metro Vancouver staff to kind of reach out to all cities to find out what they're doing and maybe consolidate a list that other municipalities that aren't doing can grab from. So I just wanted to ask, I know we have the Green Ambassador Program. They were out in force in the rain yesterday at the Cherry Blossom Festival. Are they available for any of these events, or either to be recruited for extra volunteering, recruited to be paid? And if not them, do we recommend other organizations to recipients of this grant as a group that could come do the sorting and hauling away of the uncontaminated waste after these events?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, through the Green Ambassador Program, they can request, any event can, through the proper channels. We do have that on our city website, as well as through the application process. They also too, and of the grants that we're recommending today, 32 of those applications will go through our REACT application process.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw everybody's attention to GP 94. The last one that's approved is number 52, the West Richmond Community Association Summer Event Series. This event welcomes the community to enjoy games, crafts, art stations by local artists and local musical performances. Staff recommended that they get 93% of their funding of their $2,000 request. And what are they going to get? $1,241. Just below that is the total for what it would cost for all of the programs that have been approved. It's $100,105. If we times that by 83%, that would mean we've increased the grant funding from $51,000 to $83,087.15. So I would like to amend this to go back to the 83% that we had last year of funding and make that $51,052 just an even $84,000. And I make that motion.
Before we have a motion on that, can you remind us of what is the budget and how is that?
Yes, we brought forward the proposed budget as part of the 2025 city grant program. So that was approved by council and brought forward as part of the budget process. So we do bring this forward on an annual basis. We can certainly review and look at the number for next year. And revise it then, but it was approved as part of the city city event program budget.
And it was 53 or?
It's $51,000.
Okay. So Councillor Day, let me clarify.
Yeah.
So you're saying increase that budget by $30,000? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, I go from $51,052 to $84,000. And then that
Okay.
takes us back to the same 83% of funding that we allowed in 2024. It's not an increase, really, because it's just doing what we did last year.
And where would the money come from?
Well, it could come from, I'm not sure, where, you said it came from city, what did you call it? The city events fund?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, it came from the rate stabilization account.
Okay, well, maybe it could come from there.
Well, okay, maybe we should ask about the rate stabilization account. Jerry, tell us about that one.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the rate stabilization account is usually we deposit the year-end city surplus into that account. So it's a balance that is then brought forward for funding things such as the major events.
So, I mean, we have a lot of reserve accounts. I think that it's an extra, I'm just doing the math here, but it's about, $33,000 to fund it at the same level as we did last year, which is 83% instead of 67%.
Okay, and then, so you're saying that every successful applicant would get 83%?
Instead of the 67% that we're giving this year.
Okay, so, let's see now. Okay, I think we should hear from more speakers before we get into that. Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the nobility of moving forward. I think we should do this next year and give direction to staff to increase it. If you look very carefully, only 6 grants of the 77 were below 70% of what they got. And to start adding nickels and dimes and $25 here and $40 there and $13 here, I think it would be very prudent for that. And of those 7 or 6, have a look specifically of what they were doing when one of them only got 59% of what they got. I thought that was a fair adjudication of the activity that they were doing, as opposed to just saying, okay, maybe instead of 59%, you should get 90% or 83%. I'm not sure they warrant it. I'm not there because I didn't see the application, but I would concur with staff on the material that they were able to preview. So it'd be my suggestion, Your Worship, if the amender to amend it, staff have a look at the propriety of possibly increasing the amount to grants for next year in this category, and then go from there, as opposed to starting to go through 77 grants and where we are now.
So that, yeah, you could address that in terms of once the motion is made.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a
Because I think then you would vote against the change to the budget for this year and give us staff direction for next. Okay, Councillor Galanders.
Thank you. Yep, that's definitely an option as well. I'm just curious about this 67%, because the overall number, it's that we wanted to land on 51052. It's not that we aimed to do 67%. So it was actually, only 50, just over 50%, right? Because the funding request was 100,105, and we're giving 51052. So we actually only funded about 50% of what was requested of what was approved. And, yes, some were given 93% and some were given far less. So maybe instead of going through all of those and making everything the even 80%, we just, to bump it up to 67% of 100,000, just evenly increase the percentage on all of them, to increase it a bit. And I was wondering if we could get a memo by Monday on what possible funding sources could be that we hadn't already discussed, so then we don't have to make a final decision on that tonight.
I think if we decide to increase the budget, we should refer it back to staff for them to give us further advice on the apportionment between the various groups.
Would that be a referral just until Monday, or for a whole 2 weeks?
You would then refer it back on that basis. After you increase the budget, then you refer it back. Okay, Councillor.
Yes, can you just tell me the 25 that were turned down? I just want a round number. If we funded all of the applications, what would the cost have been?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, we would have to go back and evaluate the ineligible applications, as they were ineligible, so they were not evaluated.
Okay, so I just want to make a point here based on principle here, is the ones, and you've heard my argument of the imbalance we have here. Now, if we're going back and we're saying, guess what? Those of you that were approved, we're going to give you more money. How does that make sense? We should be widening the net, trying to get more of these groups together and involved in this. It makes no sense, the ones that we, approved, we're going to give them more money now versus the ones that we're showing the door.
I want to respond to some of the comments by saying, that these are community celebration grants, and just reading right from the report on page 81. They support the council endorsed guiding principles for city events, including building local capacity by investing in community-driven events, providing opportunities for residents and community groups to collaborate, contribute, and participate in maximizing social benefits by fostering volunteerism and increasing sense of community pride and belonging. So it doesn't mean that if it's a good thing that we should support it through this set of grants. I mean, we do have the whole grant program where we give out well over $1 million each year. I mean, this is something very specific. And so I think that my point is we need to bear that one in mind. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. First, thanks for the report, and thanks for what would have been a tremendous amount of work going through all these and trying to make very difficult decisions on a number of causes that are all good causes. based on the criteria that we have. I have no difficulty referring, or staff looking at this in the budget process that comes forward and seeing if the policy fits and if it can be changed somehow, or the criteria and the amount of money. But the amount of money in the budget now is what we approved. And so to talk about 83% versus 67% is a little bit, not the point I'd look at. The popularity of the program based on the budget that we set divided by the number of people that were approved means, because there's more applicants, that they're likely going to get less money than they did the year before. If we set it at 83% and have 5 applicants next year, well, they're all going to get quite a bit of money. So I'm not going to support increasing the budget on the fly. I think we're in for a really tough budget year. There's going to be things that are beyond our control. And I think when we talk about increasing budgets, we should do it in a very process-oriented way. And if we want to change it and increase it, I could probably support that, maybe not. But I'd like to have a thorough analysis done of that before we do that. And I don't think it's a good idea to change budgets on the fly. And I think this is a tremendous amount of work. And so thank you for doing that. And a lot of good causes are going to be helped a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for all the hard work on this, and thank you for getting back to me today and answering all my questions about this. And I agree with a lot of what's been said around the table. I think that we should press forward with what we've got. I think supporting the work that staff's done and supporting the community events that are put forward. I think the people that weren't approved understand why they weren't approved and may adjust them accordingly. I know certainly some of the events, like the Homa Outdoor Carnival, it's outdoors, so that's why you have access to that. Some of the other ones have theirs indoors and they're not accessible, and they are a fundraiser, and so it's a slightly different thing, and it's meant to be a different event, and so therefore it qualifies for funding differently. So it's not necessarily that everyone's putting on exactly the same thing and being treated differently because they wrote their grant differently. I think they understand. I think the PACs know what they're doing. They throw out to get any money they can because they're good like that. Well, and just like we are, we at the City of Richmond, we apply for a lot of grants. I'm sure there's some that we don't get, even though there seems to be good news all the time that we often get grants. I think that, yeah, if we want to raise it for next year, I think that's a good idea. I don't think raising it on the fly right now is the way to go. I think, we have a process. Let's stick with our process. If we want to change our process, then let's look at that and do that accordingly. Thank you.
Now, it's been moved and seconded. Now, Councillor Day, if you want to make your motion to increase it, it'd be by way of an amendment to that. Go ahead.
It doesn't sound like there's enough appetite around the table to increase it for this year, so I'm prepared to make a referral motion after this is passed to look at increasing the funding for next year.
Well, why don't we just add it to the motion, providing a direction to staff to review the amount of the budgeted amount for the community celebration grants for 2026 and report back through committee.
Okay,
Okay, that's what you want, right?
so you're adding a number 3.
I'll add that as number 3 if that's by consent. Okay. Okay, so that's added for now. Go ahead.
And staff examine the definitions in the policy and the clarity of the policies with regard to all the conversation that took place this afternoon. I think that has to be done and bring it back next year or whenever you've had a chance to
Yeah,
deal with it.
I think all we need to say is for staff to look at the definitions in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
And
That's
again,
good enough.
report back. Okay, so it has number 3 with looking at more money and the definitions for next year. That's you. You're off. No, I'm trying to turn it off. Leave it alone. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's good. Thank you, Seth. Okay, then we have the OCP, environmentally sensitive areas.
To the chair, nothing further to add to the report. I do have Mr. Russell Nelson here with me, who's the author of the report. We also have representatives from Diamond Head Consulting in case there are any technical questions, and clerk is handing out larger copies of the attachments that were part of the report.
So,
Yes.
well, yeah, but they're not as big. So in terms of the public consultation, if this goes through, then it would be part of the OCP discussions. You know, someone wants more added or something taken away or something, we'll get to that in due course.
To the chair, that is correct. There'll be public consultation. We'll also be taking this to the advisory committee on the environment. So there'll be many opportunities to fine tune the maps before they're presented to council for a final adoption.
Okay, let's see, what's that? That's Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to staff. Thank you for this. And thanks for the larger copies, because I was trying to compare side by side and just to see were there any little lots added and whatnot. And in the report, it says some city-owned lots were added. So I just want to confirm that there's no privately owned residential properties that are being added to it at this time? Or are there?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, to the best of my knowledge, there are not privately owned lands added to the map. They're all public lands.
Okay. And then just a question about what we've done in the past and how we're managing and mitigating what we have right now with our ESAs. There was a complaint recently made by somebody they were trying to sell their property, and it was residential property, and they weren't able to, the purchaser discovered there was the ESA on it because they had overgrown blackberry in the backyard. So it was not really high quality ESA when it's just blackberry. How are we managing that situation now?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You did.
Yeah, so we're taking a great deal of effort to clarify on a ESA polygon by ESA polygon to confirm that we have, based on our best available information, that there is some ecological values and features on the ESA. Obviously with a program that's been around as long as this one has, things change, trees disappear, foliage changes and so forth. But to try to help, again, build our inventory and understanding of each of those polygons, we're also taking extra steps to clarify and confirm through photography, through satellite imagery, among other things. So we'll have a catalog of all the ESAs. So at the time of adoption, exactly what is there at the time that the ESA was identified and confirmed through that adoption. So hopefully that will then provide clarity for future landowners and so forth. If it takes 20 years before they come around and come talk to us, we'll have a lot better information than we currently do.
I've heard through some property owners have said that when the ESA was put on their property, back when it was, that they weren't informed at the time. Is that true, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, I can't speak for what the process was back in, I guess this would have been 2012, the last time the ESA was updated. There would have been public consultation as part of the OCP review. I don't believe there was individual letters sent to the property owners.
Right.
But what I can add to this is that what we're trying to clarify as well is that even though your property may be designated ESA, it doesn't mean it can't be developed. It's essentially a layer that indicates, or it's a flag that says there's some environmental attributes that need to be understood further to understand how a development proposal could be considered for that site. So we want to provide that clarity through through the policy work that we're going to be doing.
Just another follow-up. That's very helpful, and that sounds very reasonable. And there is one, I appreciated the notes on the being able to get the ESA removed for farming and for a proper farm plan and everything else. There are other ways that the ESA can affect a farm, not just in the farmland area, but even in the home plate area. So I know a farmer who, very busy farmer, a longtime Richmond farmer, and there was an ESA put on the front of his property because where it goes onto the ditch, which would be the city property. And so in order for him to be able to do his home plate, it was triggered to build a house. And the issue is that they have to manage and maintain this area. They can't just mow it. or maybe they can mow it, but that invasive species from the ditch come up into the ESA. And so it's like some city responsibilities are affecting the CSA and just putting a bit of an extra burden on the homeowner and the farmer?
Yeah.
How can we manage that?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Galanders. Yeah, that is something we've heard as well, and something we'll be looking at in more detail. So today's focus mostly is on the mapping.
Yeah.
But sort of the policy structure around that is something that'll come at a later date in a separate report to address that. But that is certainly something we're interested in, that the sort of maintenance aspect of it, sort of what's in a private property's perspective, what are they held to account for, and also what is the city held account to. And I think that's a bit of a shortcoming in our current process, so it'll be one of the key policy recommendations coming forward around asset management, including natural areas.
Sounds like a good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So the ESA discussion, whether you're talking about on private lands or public lands, are very controversial. We've heard the frustrations of some of the people. You gave one example. There's other people that are frustrated on the designation, and it probably predates me, but probably predates most of the people at this table of when they determined how they were going to identify the ESA, whether they went off Google Maps or whatever. So there's really no clear understanding. So when you bring forward, and let's talk about this one on the city properties here, the criteria you use to identify this, is this the same criteria that's utilized for private lands, or did we do something unique?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed. So we applied the same methodology in terms of a science-based analysis of and the creation of those ESAs using a variety of sources of imagery that's noted in the report. But we also did site views and visible from public land to confirm that we have ecological values as the best of our ability. And again, using photography to document that so that each of our polygons that are identified here, we have a visual record now of everything as we see it at the time of adoption. So it'll give a clear indication. So whether a applicant comes in a year from now or 10 years from now or further, we know at least what we had at that time. And if things evolve and change, then that just opens up the conversation with an applicant and how to proceed.
So there's seamless transition between private land and public land on how we identify the ESA. And I know, we want to have appropriate staff because it takes quite a while. I've had discussions with Mr. Craig with respect to some of the problems with ESA. Do we have the ability within our own local government to identify and make those changes, or do we still have to go through the province or have the province involved?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I think we have much of that within our own purview, and therefore it is a key consideration as we move through the OCP process to look at where we can fine tune and speed up our abilities to process applications and process the DPs related to these ESAs. So we notice there is some issues, and we certainly are optimistic that through our policy review process, we can find efficiencies to speed and clarify and clean things up.
And if I can also add through the chair to Councillor Heath that we're trying to provide clarity through the whole ESA process. We understand that it's confusing. A lot of property owners don't necessarily have the right consultants to guide them through the process, so we're very aware of that.
Thank you.
Wayne, Greg, did you want to add something?
Yes, thank you through the chair to Councillor Heed. In terms of ESA, the jurisdiction is the city. There are overlapping situations, such as when an ESA and an RMA overlap, where the RMA is provincial jurisdiction. We do not have the ability to alter that without provincial approval. Similarly, one of our ESA designations is the foreshore. Actions within the river are the responsibility of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and so there is federal overlap. So majority of ESA, city jurisdiction only. There are, however, instances where there is overlapping provincial or federal jurisdiction.
All right, Councilor Wolf.
Thanks. Thank you. Through your worship, to staff, a few questions here. So first off, you mentioned like we're trying to get the best of our ability of knowing these sites, and before we get this approved, we want to have a visual of what things what's on the site right now, but also you're relying some of that just topographical pictures from above, which I don't think does justice for this. I think I've probably visited or seen, laid my eyes on or feet on probably 90% of these, and some I did ask permission to go through people's property to get to access some of these kind of landlocked agricultural zones that have never been farmed. So I think a lot of what's included in the proposed one is great. I like the additions. I just want to know to what degree have our staff tried to actually get on the ground to see them, to actually document what's there as opposed to just shades of green from above, but to actually document species on all of these sites? What's the extent we've gone?
Great. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, thank you for the question. So we actually added to the work of our consultant, Diamond Head, to do that exact thing, to go out in the field and look at, as best as they're available, to document through photography what is seen there. So it complements and works in hand with the satellite imagery, the LiDAR imagery, and the orthophoto imagery that we've been using. So we've added different imagery tools plus the windshield. The one thing we didn't do is intervene or go on to private property. That's something, if it's a desire of council to do so, we can certainly make some efforts in that regard. It would just make more communication with the property owners to make that a reality. But we've taken, I think, a reasonably extensive approach given the budget and resources that we have.
Thanks. Yeah, I would counter that and say I don't think it's extensive enough, and I do think we need to call for that. So I don't know if that would be an addition, item number 3, that we could add later on. I got a couple other points I want to make first. The ESA categories, where you kind of change the name of the categories. I wonder if one of the valuable contributions we could do is where we've labeled the blue one around as marine, that we actually go a step further and we do what was in the FREMP document, the Fraser River Estuary Management Program, plan, which doesn't exist anymore, and it's been handed over from other jurisdictions to the port, which doesn't do anything. So I think we should actually be prioritizing red, yellow, green, some of the significance of these sites, because many of them just get abused because of the wood storage that goes up and down, compacts, and really disrupts any potential for these sensitive areas to be returned to actual sensitive use. So I don't know if staff have a comment on the kind of grading or prioritization that could be applied to these color schemes and the new ESA categories.
Yeah, I think through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, a FREMP I think it's probably been at least 10 years since it's been, probably more. I would think that quite a bit of work would have to be done to sort of get an update on shorelines and which ones have been altered significantly, which ones haven't been. So I would believe it would be additional work beyond this, but it's certainly something worth considering.
Great, thank you. Through your worship, two more points here. Next one is on habitat compensation. So Like there's some properties that maybe about 3 years ago, council approved because of the Farming First strategy to allow properties in the ESA area along River Road to raise the property up with tipping of fill. But then those properties, they took all the nice peat, which is why they were considered an ESA before and should still be, but they piled all the peat up with the plan that they were going to spread that back over. But it's now 3 years later, properties are up for sale. And I just wonder how we can recoup the penalty or like penalize in a way properties that disturb ESAs, clearly make a profit, and don't do any habitat compensation. In the end, they hand it to someone else who comes up with another plan and doesn't have to follow what the commitments were from the original owner.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Wolf, I think that'll be part of the policy work that we'll be preparing for as part of the OCP strategic directions that's coming up. And certainly we can speak separately about that specific site.
Sure, thanks. And then lastly, I went through a list of sites that I don't know why they were not included with the new additions. So like if we put things like the Richmond Nature Park parcels in there, why do we not put in parts of the Northwest Terra Nova? Why do we not put in parts of the west end of Gary Point Park, Pollock Park, the other parts of the Garden City lands on the west area where we just put in all the high biodiversity of native plants? Tree Island over on the east end
What's
of
the
Richmond.
answer?
Swiss Swash Island as well.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Wolf, what I would say is a separate conversation, and not just with Councilor Wolf, but with any other members of council as part of this consultation. We'd be happy to hear which properties should be included, and we can certainly look into that and work with our consultants.
So would that be suitable before approving this and sending it out for consultation? Because I think we should have that consultation on what council feels should be included in the map, as opposed to getting it from the public and then council wants to change it and then you have to go back to the public.
To the chair, we can take that under advisement and have our consultants look at that as soon as possible and prior to the consultation, which will be in June. So we do have a bit of time to consider those additional properties.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the map that says areas that have been removed from the ESA map, and some just stand out, like obviously the Iona Island, sewage treatment plant, and the auto carrier's lot at the end of Stevenson Highway, and the Shell Road Trail that is now a trail. So we've had to, over time, remove them. If we've made a mistake in any of this, what is the appeal process?
To the chair to Councillor Day, I would say if there's been a mistake after the map has been approved, I mean, it's certainly something that can be updated from time to time by council. It's a living document. What I would like to see done with the map is once it is approved by council, that there is regular updates, perhaps on an annual basis. So if there's any errors, whether it's administrative or whatever it may be, then they could be updated at that time.
So if we spot something that we need to add, or if we need to take off, we would just work with you, or do we work with a consultant?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, what I would suggest is you work through staff, and we can work with consultants as well to update any mapping. If there's any errors that you're noticing to the maps that are presented today, absolutely.
Huge job, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
Councillor Glenn, no, Councillor Liu.
Thank you for this, through your worship to staff, thank you. This is pretty comprehensive and fairly confusing. So what part of this is going to public consultation?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, it will be the, I guess, attachment 2, which is the proposed ESA map. However, I think telling the full story and having the existing ESA map is also helpful as well, and that residents and stakeholders can see what the changes are. Hence the 4 maps, but it is the proposed map that is going to be considered in the new OCP later on this year.
Okay, so it's just the map, it's not necessarily our rules around the ESA that's going to.
Through the chair, Councillor Liu, just to clarify, this is, I guess, one of 2 reports that council will be reviewing. The next report will be looking at the proposed strategic directions. One of the target areas is environmental protection, which is ESA related. So there'll be additional sort of proposed directions in a report in about a month's time.
Okay, because because it seems so complicated, I'm wondering what kind of response you actually expect the public to give you on this. And why, like, why are we bothering to do this, really? Like, it seems to me, I look at qualified environmental consultants have to be used in all kinds of situations, and half the time they're like, okay, so there could be a loss of breeding habitat for bird species that nest in the resident trees and Himalayan blackberry within an urban environment. To compensate for the loss of trees, artificial raptor perches could be used to replace the function of trees, blah, blah, blah. So we have situations where we have an invasive species. What's happening with that invasive species? We'd actually like the person to remove the blackberry, but because there's now a bird nesting in it, now they've got to put up a raptor perch or something. So it becomes this quite circular thing. It's very confusing. And then to just kind of put it out to public consultation, what do you think about this? And then some guy goes to, build something in his big yard that had a green patch on it on this map. And suddenly he's got a, $10,000 or $20,000 bill for this. But he didn't realize that he was agreeing to that by commenting on it on the public consultation. So it's like, why would a public comment on this? And then are we also putting this to the the advisory committee on the environment? Because like there is a group of people that know a little bit more about this, but it is pretty complicated that we're putting this out to people with not maybe enough in-depth and background and nuances of all these rules.
Through the chair, to Councillor Liu, thank you. Yes, it is complicated, and the map is just one component of the program or policy. And as John mentioned just moments ago, we'll have a second report coming back that'll start to give some further context to help guide when we do go out to the public for engagement. It's not just the map. So there'll be context information, proposals that council's seen and directed staff to communicate, dialogue, and consult on. And we're seeking public feedback on both the map, but also the context that would guide the interpretation and implications of it as it relates to development in the future.
And through the chair to council, just to add to that, exactly, that the context will be more in the second report, which will be providing policies, clarifying ESAs and what this would mean to the general public. One thing I did want to reiterate here, though, any property that's on an ESA is almost similar to the heritage inventory. It's a flag that there's some environmental assets or attributes on the property that need to be better understood. And that's where a qualified environmental professional then is brought in as part of the DP process to see what's there, what can be done to, mitigate those environmental attributes if there's a development proposal. We want to provide that clarity to that whole process because we completely understand that it's been very confusing to many property owners. So hopefully the mapping eventually will provide some clarity along with the policies and strategic directions that we'll be bringing forward to council later in the month.
Okay, so like if someone's looking to sell their property, they should clear all the blackberry off at first, I guess? Well, because it seems that the person who's trying to develop the property is getting punished if the property was previously overgrown. But, and like you drive along the freeway and there's these massive amounts of blackberry, but now you're gonna punish that guy for removing it, the next guy? Like our process seems to have some opportunity for some
Well, and through the chair to Councillor Liu, and in that situation, if the property is completely covered in invasive species, then the plan would likely be to remove it. We would probably work with the property owner through a DP process to plant some native species and it would be part of a development of that site depending on what the development potential is. So like I say, we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis to understand what the environmental attributes are in there. And certainly looking from aerial photos, you're not going to get it all right. That's one dimension. You really do need to be on the ground with a professional to understand exactly what's on that site. So,
Thank you.
Is the fact of having an ESA on your property on title?
no.
You see, that highlights one of the concerns that I have, that I hear regularly, is people do not know that they have an ESA on their property until they want to do something, and it's too late to make adjustments at that point. What could be done? And going back to the earlier point, whenever ESAs were invented here, I guarantee you, there's a lot of people that didn't know about it. They just didn't know about it. And so what can be done to better inform people?
To the chair, certainly we can consider that as part of the consultation. You know, one option is to do a mail out to all properties that might be affected by ESA DPs. I should mention, though, that there's properties throughout the city that are impacted by DPs of other categories. So, but we can certainly talk to our law department as well as looking at what could be placed on title if you're in a DP area. If there's options that could be used to notify.
Well, the problem is if you send your letter to, you know, owner A, who sells it to owner B, who doesn't know anything about it, it hasn't helped very much. All right, one question from Councillor Wolf. One question.
It's not a question. I'd like to add item number 3, just like we did with the last item on the agenda, to direct staff, this time instead of review budget, to enhance the budget of the environmental sensitive map so that we can get more accurate representation in our records.
We are not talking about the budget. This is about mapping today. Okay, if you want to make budgetary considerations, then that's for another time. Moved and seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. All right, that does it for GP. Thank you, staff. I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're now adjourned. And no, we've got a finance committee. Okay, I'll call the finance committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? All those in favor, opposed, carried. And we have the annual development DC. Moved and seconded. Cindy, anything to add to that?
Nothing to add.
Okay, Councillor Galanders.
Just a quick question and a comment. Sorry, my agenda was in the wrong spot, so I kind of lost track of where I was because I had to take it out. Sorry. There's a map of, a chart showing what the DCC balance was and what, and what we, interest and then transfers out and then the balance. No, I've got one. It was just that it was in the middle. But thank you. Okay, that's perfect. Do we have a projection of what we're expecting that to look like over the next few years, based on estimates of things coming up? And
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, not officially. This is all based on what developments occur in future. So the market changes quite quickly these days, so there's not an accurate forecast on DCCs.
Okay. And then I just wanted to make a comment, actually a question and a comment on the waivers. So it says in the back on FIN 13 what the waivers and reductions are allowed as per section 563 of the Local Government Act. And the second point on that, we knew that it could be waived for affordable housing and supportive housing, not-for-profit housing, but point 2 says it is allowed for for-profit affordable rental housing. So what is the difference between for-profit affordable rental housing and just purpose-built rental housing?
Well, is that an exception to our plan? Do we give waivers for that?
To the chair, the waivers are for that. I don't actually have the details of what the differences are for that. There have not been any requests for waivers on either of those categories for 2024.
If there was, just because we had talked amongst ourselves occasionally about DCC waivers for purpose-built rental, can we find out if that would be allowed under the Local Government Act? Or what that criteria for affordable would be? Not right now, but just at some point, maybe in a memo or something?
Through the chair to Councilor Galanders, we can do that. One thing to note, though, is any waiver that is granted by the city still requires that amount of funds.
To be paid by the city, right?
By the city.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Liu opposed. Okay, we are now adjourned